Can you comment on what EGT upper limits should be before the concern of damaging the cats or other critical components, especially for us that track our cars on dual pulley setups with heat exchanger?
First off, I'm going to qualify that with how are you getting your EGTs. These cars have calculated EGTs, so it's not necessarily the most accurate thing, particularly on modified cars with varying octane fuels and whatnot. So that's something to take with a pretty big grain of salt.
And where are you measuring it?
And then if you're actually measuring it, where exactly are you measuring it? Yeah, is it right off the right at the runner outlet of the head? Is it
further down because it cools down dramatically
before or after the cat? So
even from like when we've done EGT measurements, from the outlet of the exhaust port, like at the header flange, down 6 inches near the collector, it could drop hundreds of degrees just in that short period of time.
So yeah, you really need to if you really want to know what your EGTs are, you've got to set up a probe or two. And then
and then it needs to be referenced to something. So we don't make any EGT recommendations. The factory ECU does calculates through different parameters, and it solves equation for what the EGT should be.
And the factory protection. The factory protections and factory limits will start coming in, mid to high 900C.
Right.
And then
maybe you should just talk about that real quick.
So I mean the factory stuff tries to target or limit the EGT to right around mid 900C on those cars. And it does that by then once it gets up to that point, it goes into basically what's called a EGT control method, and it'll start adding a little bit of fuel and richening things up a bit to try and maintain that. Generally, you can richen the fuel mixture. If you keep timing the same, you'll get a little cooler EGT out of it. So.
But then there's also some Cali protection logic built in there too.
Well, that's what that is. And then it'll start limiting the amount.
Because if it dumps too much fuel, then the cat will eventually be damaged.
There's lower limits that it can go to, and then it'll start reducing the amount of like timing reductions you can do on gear shifts and some other stuff just to try and keep some extra heat out of there. And we do the same thing, honestly, with our overrun stuff. If EGTs are over, I want to say about the same, about 950 to 1000C, we shut down our overrun crackle, logic, and all that, just in a similar vein, just to keep temperatures in a reasonable range.
But the factory ECU will engage in those type of protections, and we keep all that stuff intact. So I'm not, I can't say that for every tune on the market, but that's always important for us, is to keep all that stuff in place. From a generic tuning standpoint, I think generally a lot of people agree that around 1600 Fahrenheit at the exhaust port is kind of a safe limit, and above 2000 you're too hot, and you can start melting exhaust valves and pistons.
It's tough to give a very generic answer to that.
But these are rough guidelines or conventional wisdom on EGT tuning. But if you're running our tuning, you shouldn't really need to worry about it too much. If the car is continually going into this protection mode, then that's something to look into, and you could contact us, and we can help you with that by doing some logs.